Lisa Merck, a nurse in Colorado, is recovering after testing positive for coronavirus earlier this month. She spoke with NBC about her symptoms and recovery.
It was super scary. It's the diagnosis when public health called, my stomach just sank. I was like, oh my gosh, I have COVID-19. I have the coronavirus. And how long have I had it? Who have I exposed? You just start running things through your mind. Am I going to be okay? What's going to happen? Am I going to get worse? What's my course going to be like? So that was really scary for me. I mean, the symptoms were definitely a lot worse. I'm a strong person, so I can handle, a few negative comments. And, it was the physical symptoms that were the worst for me. I do, worry about getting ready to go back to work. When I go back to work, I think that the public health called me and they said that instead of a 14-day isolation, it was going to be a 10-day isolation. And originally you had to have 2 COVID-19 tests that were negative 24 hours apart. And now you don't have to have any of that testing to make sure you're negative. So, the things that I wonder is, am I still going to be a carrier? And the disease is so new. Can I get coronavirus again? I know that I'll probably have antibodies to it, but seems like it's been a really long course, because at first I started out just having a little tiny runny nose. It's almost, if you go outside and it's cold, it was just a runny nose like that. That's it. I didn't have really any congestion. I had a few little sneezes. And then the next day I started having some neck pain and shoulder pain on my left side. And then it spread across to the back area around where my shoulder blades are, and I started getting really sweaty, and then I felt like I kind of wanted to collapse. And I remember having almost this burning sensation, when you take a deep breath. On March 2nd, I called the CDC and I called our local health department, because I just wanted them to know that I had a lot of travel and what my symptoms were, and that I had a fever. And they said that I didn't meet criteria for testing. So just to really hang out, there was no testing that was really required. And then on March 8th is when they actually did the testing, when I walked into the emergency room. And I'm glad I did. I don't think that we should bog our emergency rooms down with what you have, but if you are experiencing, a life-threatening illness or anything like that, I feel like that's what the emergencies, departments and stuff are for. But they're doing really great triaging now over the phone and, through drive-thrus and stuff like that, and tents, which I think is really helpful. My message is to stay healthy. Treat your body with respect. Listen to your body. Be mindful. Be careful about being out. If you think you're sick, don't go out in public. Really practice the isolation. I think that that's going to be key for everybody. I think we're going to see a big spike in the coronavirus, just especially because we're going to be having more and more testing. But just take care of yourself, treat your body right, exercise if you can, drink lots of fluids, do over-the-counter Motrin and Tylenol, just staying really on top of it, getting your rest and staying on top of it, letting your family and friends help you if they can.
Millions of Americans are under lockdown as restrictions tighten across the U.S. to try and curb the coronavirus outbreak. Scores of businesses are closing shop today in the nation's largest cities. NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is in New York City. Gabe, you were out there covering the business impact for us yesterday. Does today feel different?
Hi there, Lindsay. Good afternoon. Well, right behind me, you can see Times Square. We've been seeing a bit less foot traffic today, but there are still plenty of people outside, perhaps less so earlier in the morning, but now we do see quite a bit of people here. And perhaps because of that, the mayor of New York says that he is weighing whether to issue a shelter-in-place order here in New York. Authorities in the San Francisco Bay Area have already issued that type of order, the most drastic in the nation. Now, I spent the morning speaking with some small business owners in and around New York, and What they told me is that they are just furious at the uncertainty moving forward. Take a listen to what they had to say. Right now, many small businesses are in a state of confusion.
There's not enough information. Give us the information so we could give our employees information. When are we going to get some relief? What kind of relief?
Today, the president and his Treasury Secretary said that at some point in the next couple of weeks, they want Americans to get a check. They wouldn't say exactly how much yet, but what's your reaction to that? You know, what do you think that giving all Americans a check will help?
Some.
Some?
It might help some.
Okay.
But not everyone.
Do you think it'll make a big difference for small business owners like yourself?
It will not, unfortunately, because as a small business, it's still an important operation, which brings in money for not only our own families, but for all of our employees' families. And a little check here, and it's not going to be able to cover all that.
What's your message to President Trump?
We need help now.
So, Lindsay, we spoke with those business owners at the Westway Diner, not far from here, just a few blocks from here, by the theater district, and they actually watched President Trump's news conference a little earlier today. And what they told me was, look, it just seems like a drop in the bucket at this point. Any financial relief that the federal government is talking about, that $1,000 check that they might be sending to people that's light on details, they're not really quite sure, and they aren't really sure how long that this will continue. Now, what I will say is something that really got their attention earlier today was New York's governor, Andrew Cuomo, saying that the infections could peak here in New York City in about 45 days. That's longer than they had previously heard, even though the president did say July or August for when this crisis, we could get to the worst of this crisis yesterday. Today they're hearing 45 days, and that gives them really no solace. Now, as you can see behind me, plenty of people still here, and that is one of the things that the mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, is weighing right now. Are people taking these orders seriously enough? Do they understand the threat fully? Because right now, these restrictions went into place last night at 8 p.m. Basically, that bars and restaurants could not have people in their dining rooms, that they had to focus only on takeout orders and delivery orders. But the question is that will people heed these warnings and continue to stay out of these businesses and continue to social distance? Now, other businesses are closed, movie theaters, casinos in New York State, and gyms as well. Those are closed. But the question is, does there need to be some type of more drastic action, a shelter-in-place order, much like we're seeing in San Francisco? Now, what Governor Cuomo did say today is that right now there are no plans. He's not considering a quarantine of any sort. That is a more extreme measure, that there have been quite a few rumors that New York could be heading towards that. But right now, the governor says that is not in the cards just yet. But again, the news this afternoon, Mayor de Blasio heavily considering that shelter-in-place order here for New York City. Millions of residents, and of course, the tri-state area here, New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, have kind of banded together, their governors have, in order to have a uniform policy here in this region, because they say what's frustrated them is that the federal government has not had many uniform guidelines across the country. The Trump administration has come back and said we put out some guidelines yesterday, but those guidelines really just seem like suggestions to many people, and they only are in place, according to the government, for 15 days, according to the feds. Again, that seems to conflict with what Governor Cuomo said earlier today. So a lot of these restaurant owners, they are furious. They feel like they're caught in the middle. And one more thing I should point out, Lindsay, today we also heard that Marriott, a major employer, plans to furlough tens of thousands of workers. So this is not just a ripple effect throughout the economy, it's a tidal wave.
So what can people do to help their local businesses right now, particularly in areas where there are or could be shelter-in-place orders?
Well, the president said today, and he spoke with several business leaders, including some of the major fast food chains. Many of them will remain open for drive-thrus, and the Trump administration is urging people to go to those businesses and, continue to have drive-thru orders, continue to do takeout orders. But Lindsay, you bring up a good point. If there is a shelter-in-place order, it gets very difficult because if they're meant to stay at home, and for example, older Americans, those with pre-existing conditions that are going to need to stay in their homes, not every place has one of those drive-through, one of those driving apps, Uber Eats, for example, that may be able to deliver you, groceries or deliver you meals. Not every place in the U.S. has that, so we're in uncharted territory here. Both local and federal authorities say this is unprecedented. And again, these small business owners really do not know how the next few months will play out. Lindsay?
Gabe, thanks so much. Markets saw a boost today after the White House task force announced an additional response to the coronavirus economic fallout. And the president is predicting a speedy recovery once the outbreak subsides.
The best thing we can do is get rid of the virus. Once that's gone, it's going to pop back like nobody's ever seen before. We will win. And when that victory takes place, our economy is going to go through the roof.
Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia, is here with me now. Caleb, do you agree with the president, or could we see long-term effects on the economy?
I think we should be prepared to see long-term effects on the economy. We haven't even heard first quarter earnings reports. Those will start coming out in the first couple of weeks of April. We haven't heard unemployment reports that have anything to do with what's been going on in the economy over the last couple of weeks. Those will happen at the beginning of April and the beginning of May. So we don't even know the depth of the impact. And because we don't know that, we don't know how long this is going to last. But it won't be a V-shaped recovery. It'll be more like a slow U. But all the pieces are in place from a fiscal and monetary stimulus point of view to get the economy going once we get through this and we start seeing a leveling off of new cases in the U.S.
And the Trump administration is seeking an $850 billion emergency stimulus package. What kind of economic relief would it seek to offer?
Well, that has everything to do with helping small businesses out, helping individuals or independent contractors out, deferring tax payments. But they've done a number of key things on the monetary level where the Federal Reserve has bought mortgage-backed securities and bought government bonds to make sure there's liquidity in the banking system. And they've also opened up the commercial paper window. That's where small businesses and companies borrow for short-term expenses like payroll taxes, like payroll itself. So those things are the type of things that grease the wheels for the economy to get going once we've gotten through this. They're not here to fix the stock market today, although the stock market might be reacting today. They're here for when we get to the recovery part of this to accelerate that, and that could be in a few months.
Are we any closer to a recession today, and how should we all prepare?
Yeah, we're going to be in a recession. I don't think anybody doubts that. All the big investment banks and all the research houses say that growth will fall anywhere from 2% to 5% for the first quarter and probably into the second quarter. For individuals and for individual investors, recessions and bear markets don't always come hand in hand, although we have a bear market right now. What we need to do for individuals is make sure that they have enough cash for those emergency spends they may need to do for healthcare expenses, to shore up their cash, cut down expenses where they can, and be prepared for when the market begins to take off for investors so they can get right back in and rebuild their portfolios.
Caleb Silver, thank you so much.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.